It's by me. I know a lot of familiar faces and a few that aren't familiar, but I thank you all very much for coming. I had great assistance with this program with one of our 6th-year pharmacy students that we helped train and hopefully send off to be better pharmacists after they leave here with the experience they get. Her name is Sungmin Byun. We call her Song, it's a little easier to say, but she did a great job helping me out. If you don't know me, I'm Steve Bernardi. I'm the co-owner along with my wife Diane, who's in the back in the Florida shirt that she's got on. We have been pharmacists for over 40 years, and we are currently going on our 30th year of ownership here at Johnson Compounding Wellness. We sort of, as I would say, we came over to the dark side about 20 years ago when we decided that there was a better way to practice pharmacy. So I think people who have been to other places and have come here sort of figure out that we do things a little differently in other places. I want everyone to understand.
Is the force with you?
You know, it could be. It could be. I want everyone to understand that even though I researched everything I'm going to talk about tonight, still there is opinion involved here, and so understand that these are my opinions, my personal beliefs. So take it for that. It's good, real good science, but I'm just, not everyone agrees with me, especially not some people in the medical field, especially do not agree with me, but that's okay. I'm good with that. Yes.
Quickly add, thank you for opening something different than a regular traditional medicine. And
Okay.
FDA mafia is not out.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think we're probably good.
Full FDA mafia.
Thank you. So, housekeeping, cell phones, put them on vibrate, please. If you don't mind, I think that's only polite. At the end of the lecture, we give 20% off everything in the store. So the flyer that you got has part of my presentation on one side summarized into one page. There's 60 slides, so we fit 60 slides on this one page. So good luck to all of you. But on the other side is all our sales for the month. So these items you'll see, some of these things are 20 and 30% off. You get an extra 20% off on top of that price tonight. So if you need anything, it's a good time to shop after the lecture, okay? And then Gary mentioned to me that we should mention something about allergies tonight, because I don't know if I don't think I'm the only person driving a green car these days, but just about every car you see is covered with pollen. And so we have something called New England Allergy Mix that we have developed over the past 15 years, and it's the most effective product I've ever personally used for allergies. It works in Florida too. We go to Florida in the winter, and it actually works down there, even though it's specific to allergens of New England. So that's just one of the things he mentioned. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, I think most of you probably are on our newsletter, but you're welcome to sign up. And I think we are ready to go. So when I researched this, as I said, there is so much information out there, and the more I read, the more I realized that I didn't know. But I also realized that it's the volume of information on this. This is a really important subject, because so many people take prescription medications that if they don't know what they're taking, there's a lot of problems caused by prescription drugs these days. In pharmacy school, we were taught the side effects of drugs and what to tell people about them. Diane and I graduated almost 40 years ago, okay? But we really weren't taught what were the signs and symptoms of drug nutrient depletion. We were just taught, okay, these are the side effects, and you tell people you're going to take this drug and this is going to happen or that's going to happen. But we really weren't taught, it wasn't part of the profession to teach people, okay, so this is going to happen to me, so what do I do about it? A couple of the things they did teach us back then, very early on, were things like if you take a fluid pill, a diuretic like Lasix or hydrochlorothiazide, or otherwise known as HCTZ, you need to eat a banana. Well, why do you need to eat a banana? You need to eat a banana because it has potassium to replace what you're losing with the diuretic. There was a drug called isoniazid, or there is a drug called isoniazid, which is used for tuberculosis, something that's almost eradicated today, although with we have a different immigrant population today than we did 40 years ago, so the drugs sort of wiped it out 40 or 50 years ago. It's making a little bit of a comeback. It comes in from Asia and other parts of the Eastern Europe at times. But it's not a drug that you would commonly see. It's nothing that I've seen a little bit of it in practice, but not a lot. So again, the slides are really voluminous. This is supposed to be a consumer lecture, so we're not going to take a test or a quiz or anything else. We're just going to, they are available. I didn't print them because I don't like wasting paper. I sort of have a thing about wasting paper, so, but I have references for everything, and anybody that would like a copy of them is welcome to them. So I found 3 particular articles besides this presentation that I thought were very interesting. This particular one listed 17 drug classes. Underneath them was hundreds of drugs and thousands of references as to what happens when you take these different medications. I do have the links for them. I thought what impressed me the most was the magnitude of information that exists on this topic, yet how little is shared with consumers for the most part. In 2013, Dr. Hyla-Cass went on to say, the truth is that every medication, including over-the-counter drugs, depletes your body of something specific and vital to you. Okay, it's not, you know, one of the scientific things was for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So for everything, even when you take vitamins, if you can take a certain vitamin and it's going to cause an imbalance in your body of other vitamins. And your body is very smart, but what the body can't do is force you to take everything in balance. Many of the conditions that physicians see today may actually be related to nutrient depletion. Many physicians address these symptoms by prescribing more drugs, further compounding the problem. I can adjust, by the way, if anyone gets hot. I don't think anyone's going to get cold, but if anyone gets hot, I can turn the air conditioning down. Another article in Life Extension in 2006. 30% of pharmaceutical side effects are the direct result of drug-induced nutritional deficiencies. The drugs rob your body of ingredients and nutrients. It's not, you know, I've heard that figures stated that over 100,000 deaths a year occur in this country in hospitals of people taking prescription drugs that were prescribed, and they're taking the drugs the way they were prescribed. So it's not people overdosing, it's not people abusing themselves, it's people, it's adverse drug reactions. It's an absolutely crazy number. So you probably want to know by now, what is DND? It is drug-induced nutrient depletion. So you take one medication for a particular condition, and your body, you know, this drug, God gave us this wonderful world and these wonderful drugs to treat us acutely for things, but what we didn't think about was, okay, I'm going to take this, and for the most part, prescription drugs suppress something. They suppress your blood pressure, they suppress your cholesterol, they decrease your heart rate, you know, you name it. I mean, they increase your thyroid, goes on and on and on. The problem is long-term depletion caused by drugs gets worse over time. So it's just like, it's like a leaky, you know, it's like your pool is leaking, right? And over time, guess what? The level gets a little bit lower. Well, the same thing happens in your body when you take particular medications. This is 2, by the way. So interrupt anytime.
It had look like a 2 degrees.
Secondary depletion. So,
is that what that means?
so you could start with depleting one thing, and then you deplete something else.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times we talk about how you'll get prescribed something and you'll get a side effect from, you know, you get prescribed a drug for arthritis and it gives you an upset stomach. So now you get prescribed a drug for the upset stomach, and that causes your bones to lose calcium. So now you are losing calcium. So now you get prescribed a drug to help your body with, you know, and it goes on and on and on. Or you can, at least. So again, I'm going to go real fast through these slides because there's 60 of them, and I'm on the clock back there. I was told I'm on the clock, and I know from being here myself in some of these lectures, I want to get home in a reasonable hour as well. It's not because I need a beer or anything, but just because I want to get home in a reasonable hour. So, recommended daily allowances. Okay, recommended daily allowances, when you read it on a box of cereal or anything that's required to label as such, those were developed in almost like prehistoric ages. And I mean, what I mean by that is that when they came over here on boats from England, they got scurvy because they didn't have any vitamin C. All right, so the recommended daily allowance of vitamin C is what would prevent scurvy. It doesn't talk about what's in our diets and what's lacking in our diets. You know, when they measure oranges and they take 10 different oranges, and probably Gary has probably mentioned some of these things if you've gone to a lot of his lectures, but you can take 10 oranges and one of them has 0 milligrams of vitamin C, another one has 100. They're all supposed to have 100, and the rest of them have somewhere in between that. So things are not, because of the way we farm our agriculture system, things don't really have in them what they're supposed to. But I started to say when you asked the question, hey, feel free to interrupt me. I don't have anything memorized, and I'm happy to talk whenever you need. So it goes. We go on to say, however, show of hands, how many people here have 2 servings of fruits and 3 servings of vegetables a day? It's pretty good. 2 fruits, 3 vegetables. We have honest people here too. Very good. Over 60% of the adults in the United States takes more than 2 prescriptions a day, and that number I think is personally is low. I mean, I see a lot more than that. I actually when we go to Florida in the winter for a little bit, I usually don't tell people I'm a pharmacist because I don't really want to become their personal pharmacist. Getting all the questions. I mean, it's bad enough the guys come up to me and ask me for Viagra, but on the golf course. But then I get all the stuff with, I'm taking this. What am I supposed to do? I mean, I don't mind, but we actually years ago we had a continuing education, and one of the lawyers spoke, the pharmacy lawyers, and he said, you have to be careful when you're out like at a cocktail party and you're giving advice, in this society today where people are so litigious, someone could sue you for giving them advice at a cocktail party about a medical advice. So, I mean, that's why I gave my disclaimer at the beginning, because I'm good like that. So, without getting into mechanisms of action and things that I don't think are particularly important for this crowd, it's basically you take something, you take one thing in, and then something else goes down. And if you don't balance that off, your body tries to do it for you, but eventually it can't compensate for what you don't have. I mean, a lot of people are told that you get in your diet, you should be able to get all the nutrients you need in your diet. I think that's really a fallacy. You don't hear it quite as much anymore, but there are still people that feel that people like us that are proponents of supplements and vitamins are quacks and that we're ripping people off. So it's really quite sad, because I always say when we went to pharmacy school or you went to medical school and you learned about, there's something called the Krebs cycle, which is all the metabolic processes in the body, and it'll say, in this stage you use vitamin B1, and this step you use B6, and then over here you use coenzyme Q10. And I always say, I want to say to someone, so did you raise your hand in medical school and say that doesn't really work that way? Because it does. It's like, why is it okay when you're in school, but when you get out, all of a sudden it's not valid science? It's because, my opinion, my bias is, and I'm in this business, pharmacy, but my bias is that if the drug companies aren't telling people, the prescribers, what to take, then they don't believe it necessarily, at least some. So here's just an overview, and we're going to go through some of these in a little more detail, but these are some of the more critical things that get depleted by the body when you take particular drugs. We will go over these one at a time, but this is just a list of them that's up there. So the first one I think most people are familiar with is calcium. Can't see calcium at the top? Yeah. So sorry, I'm looking on this, like if I'm off, I need to know that, but thank you. So calcium is depleted by anticonvulsants. It's depleted by antacids, which is kind of crazy because a lot of antacids have calcium in them. By diuretics. So it just basically, your body needs to have calcium in it to function properly, and it needs to have acid in the body to break it down and make it work right. And if you don't, and adequate vitamin D and adequate magnesium. So if you start taking different things that'll take that out of your body, you're not going to be able to absorb the calcium. And it has to be God bless you, it has to be in an absorbable form as well. Vitamin D. Vitamin D is if someone asks me if I could only take one supplement, what would it be? Vitamin D would be one of my answers. I feel that's extremely important. Vitamin D is more and more information is coming out about how helpful it is. You wouldn't know it by looking at me, but I take vitamin D. I don't take it this time of year because I'm out in the sun a lot, but I do take it, and we also recommend people get their levels up much higher than what is on the standard blood test these days. Yes?
Why did you just say you wouldn't know by looking at you? Is there,
Dark.
I see.
Okay, sorry.
I didn't.
Dark
no.
complexion. So, some of the common drugs that deplete vitamin D are anticonvulsants, mineral oil laxatives, ulcer medications, and so you need vitamin D to absorb calcium as well. So people that have osteoporosis also have issues with vitamin D.
Steve,
Yes.
on the calcium, what is the better calcium to take? Because I know there's so many different ones out there.
So you want to take, they call them chelates. A chelate means it's bound with something else, it absorbs better. So they typically end in ATE. So if you look, it'll be like calcium malate, calcium citrate. And then you typically want to have it with vitamin D and magnesium as well, because all those things, again, in that big chart, they work together.
Is that liquid form?
Sorry?
Is that liquid form?
Liquid or capsule, yeah, or powder.
What do you think is an acceptable level of vitamin D?
I think it should be at least 50. But I think that's on the upper end of what the tests say.
50 what?
What units?
50 what?
I don't. No, it's on the. If you look at your blood test, I don't know what the I don't know if it's nanograms per mil or.
You don't know. Okay.
No, the units is what the strength is, but she's asking what's an acceptable level in your blood when you test it.
Is D3 different than D?
Yes. So there's D3 and there's D2. You want D3 as the active form, so you want to be taking D3.
What is in dairy milk? It's fortified with vitamin D. Do you know which food it is?
It's not D3, unless it says it. But typically, it's not D3. It wouldn't be. It's more expensive, so they're not going to put that in there.
So how many units would you,
2 to 5,000 a day.
2 to 5,000 a day?
Unless you're, this time of year is different. If you spend enough time in the sun, outdoors, then you don't need quite that much. But I give my mother, who turned 90 last week, I give her 1,000 a day. All right, she's doing pretty good.
I've heard that older people don't absorb it or make that
Well,
conversion.
older people don't absorb in general. All right, because as all your enzyme processes slow down, so you have all sorts of problems with absorption anyway. So, but your requirements also go down with age. In the sense that you don't need as many calories. It's just a natural evolution of what happens. Phosphorus, you typically don't take a phosphorus type of thing. It could be in, but it can get depleted in your body. It is something that's measured on a blood test. Again, it's sort of tied in with calcium. Phosphorus is a big energy thing, especially in homeopathy. So people that are low in energy often need phosphorus. Folic acid is huge. Folic acid, all sorts of birth defects are associated with folic acid. There are all sorts of drugs, major classes of drugs, anti-epileptics, anti-diabetics, ulcer meds, NSAIDs, NSAIDs. NSAID, stands for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. That's naproxen, Motrin, Celebrex, those types of things. Those are it's an acronym for those types of drugs that people over the counter leave. The big one for me here I want to point out is the birth defects. I think in the past, my children are 31 through 37. I think sort of maybe the next generation after them, I think I've seen as a healthcare professional a huge amount of increases in childhood problems with, be it autism, diabetes, epilepsy, whatever, seizure disorders. And I think a lot of it has to do with not enough folic acid. Again, because there's an attitude out there that a woman doesn't need prenatal vitamins. A lot of women who get pregnant were on birth control pills. 50 years ago, women didn't use birth control pills, but in the last 30 or 40 years, women uses birth control pills, maybe 5-6 years, maybe start in their teens and have their first kid. The age of the first child is much older now than it ever used to be. So if you've been on birth control for 10 years, get off and you want to get pregnant, now first of all, you have trouble getting pregnant. But then once you do, you're really deficient from the oral contract. They are strong estrogens is what people are taking, synthetic estrogens for birth control.
So you're deficient folic acid is what you're saying?
Mm-hmm. Among other things. But yeah, I got a slide after that'll tell you the other things, but certainly folic acid. here are some of the drugs that deplete folic acid. Again, I have, you can have oral contraceptives is down the bottom in the middle, but there's a lot of things. The drugs for the stomach, the drugs for epilepsy, the anti-inflammatory drugs. Potassium.
Where do you
Yes.
find folic acid in food?
Green leafy vegetables is one. Fruits have folic acid.
Green vegetables?
Yeah,
Which
but you got to, it's something that really, if you're of childbearing age, or if you have other things, if you're taking prescription drugs, you really need to take it in supplement form. You're not, or like in a multivitamin, the dose is usually pretty low. I mean, they've made it now so you can get up to 1 milligram without. You need 1 milligram is like the critical dose. Doesn't sound like a lot. 1 milligram is a grain of salt in essence. It's nothing, but it's essential, and that's you're not going to get it in your food usually. Typically, I mean, any nutrient for the most part, to get that amount in food, if you read the statistics, you have to be eating. You'd have to like eat so much of it that's what you'd be consumed by doing that all day long. So potassium is really huge, okay? If you don't have the right amount of potassium in your body, your heart will not beat right. So you get arrhythmias, you get all sorts of problems. Really, really important.
I'm sorry, what about the Alka-Seltzer, the potassium, what's the relationship there?
The pH. It takes it out of your body from the right by raising the pH.
As does Alka-Seltzer Gold?
Well, Alka-Seltzer Gold is aspirin, right? So I don't know how much it affects the pH. It's more, Alka-Seltzer Gold is more to take aspirin, as far as I recall.
Now, can I ask you too,
Yeah.
potassium, even if it's too high, it affects the heart as well,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
IOL.
right. You know what I look for when I read blood? I don't read. I'm not a doctor. When I look at people ask me to look at their blood work, my own included, I look for things that are, so I don't know. Potassium might be like 3.5 to 5.5, something like that. If you've got somebody that's like, if you're at 3.4, I mean, if you're at like 3.6, or you're at 5, if you're at the upper end or the lower end, neither of those. I mean, you got to think about that. That's like less than 10. That's such a minimal difference. It's like, okay, it's when you do a blood test, that's like what was floating by at that time that they do. I mean, literally, it is, and it doesn't tell you what's in your cells. It tells you what's in your blood. The important part of these nutrients is what's actually in your cells. Okay. Selenium is very deficient. Selenium causes a host of things. A lot of people with thyroid problems are selenium deficient. Selenium used to get in your soil, in plants and stuff that grew in the earth, but it's the soil, the way it's farmed now, it doesn't have as much as it used to have. So that's why you don't have the uptake of that. Iron, there's a lot of things that take iron out of the body. Not many people have an iron problem, and actually some people have too much iron, but it is possible. A lot of stuff now says that men shouldn't take iron because they can't handle it as they age. So, but I mean, if you've got a bleed, if you've got thyroid going on, if you've got something else taking it out of your body, you need it. Zinc. Yes.
When you say a thyroid condition, do you mean that you have a thyroid condition when you're taking medication for it?
Well, if you're taking medication, you would have a thyroid condition, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, if you're hypothyroid, hypothyroid, you need selenium to convert in your thyroid that you take typically is the non-active form. The regular prescription thyroid, the levothyroxine, the Synthroid, is called T4. That's the non-active form. Your body then takes it and it has to convert it to T3, which is the active form. If you don't have enough selenium is involved in that process, so is coenzyme Q10.
So if you have hypothyroidism and you're on medication for that, then you're not going to be low in selenium.
You could be.
You could.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Zinc is a biggie, especially in wound healing. If you recall, there's like a zinc lozenge people take for colds. It's almost homeopathic. Came out years ago. It tastes disgusting if you've ever had it, but it will really it knocks a cold out pretty darn good if you catch it right. It's also deficient in some people who can't taste or smell properly. I often joke with my 90-year-old mother that she can't smell or taste. That she's lucky at times that she can't smell. So, Coenzyme Q10, probably, again, another one of those. If you ask me if I could only take one supplement, what might it be? CoQ10 would be right up there. The big thing with CoQ10 is it's the #1 nutrient in your heart. And if you don't have enough, your heart doesn't work properly. Vegetarians don't typically, coenzyme Q10 and carnitine, if you don't eat meat, you don't get that in your diet. But you also, when you are taking so many different medications that, what's the biggest thing is heart. I mean, one of the biggest things out there is heart disease, right? Either it's high cholesterol, it's high blood pressure, it's arrhythmias, it's heart failure, all those things. The heart needs a sufficient supply of this nutrient to keep it pumping and beating properly. And then you start taking drugs for cholesterol. Am I not talking loud enough? You look like you're leaning. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I just want to make sure. Again, it's one of those things I get asked this a lot on the golf course, is a lot of my friends taking Lipitor or atorvastatin and statin drugs, and they've all got, cramps, and what can I do? And I give them CoQ10, and they say their wives love them for it because they're not kicking them at night anymore, because you get really bad leg cramps with it and muscle fatigue. And when they run out, I get frantic calls. Hey, I ran out and forgot to call you. Well, I'm not going to see you for a couple days, so you're going to have to wait. So. Can you
overdose in that?
No, the interesting story about coenzyme Q10 is that there was someone who had terminal cancer and was given like a week to live. They sent like the grandchild to the, and I'm probably not relaying the whole story properly, but it's something along these lines. Sent the grandchild to the store to get it. They took 10 times the dose, and like a year later they were still alive, and it was something that they had that was really responsive, and it really like brought them back to life. I mean, I'm sure they died eventually, but no, you can't take too much of it.
Isn't it energy too? I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, cellular energy, yes.
Yeah.
Would a person who had high blood pressure and was on like 1 or 2 or 3 high blood pressure medications, would they be depleted in CoQ10? Would they need a supplement for that?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
So, and then here's a big list of all these different drugs that deplete coenzyme Q10. I live in Framingham. I lived there all my life. My father was born and raised there. He died at 85. He had 4 bypasses, okay, and he was part of the Framingham Heart Study. I tell you this story because when we were little kids, my father was like 30-something years old. He had his first heart attack, and so we went to the Framingham Heart Study, and they told him, he still smoked, of course. That didn't bother it, but, we had to stop eating eggs and ice cream and all this stuff. Well, 50 years later, now we've come full circle, and eggs are good for you again, and butter is good for you, and we find out there's a lot of problems with margarine and artificial things like that. So, and they have come out and said that they were wrong. But it's, you can get off in this thing where it's the pharmaceutical companies, and again, you're going to hear me knock pharmaceutical companies, even though I'm a pharmacist. Doesn't mean I can't knock them, because they don't support me anyway. Doing compounding, we don't really use them. But in any event, they, they've got this, they've sold society on this thing that you have to lower cholesterol, and they did studies. Cholesterol is not the problem. Yes, when you get a clot in your arteries or a plaque and it forms, it does have cholesterol in it, but it's because there's oxidation ravaging your body and you're doing damage from other sources. It's not the cholesterol itself. You need cholesterol for your brain, you need cholesterol for a host of different things. Too low of cholesterol is associated with suicide and depression and a host of other things. Cholesterol is not the problem. Absolutely and positively. And I think the next generation, when we're all dead and gone, I think they're gonna look back and laugh at us and say, look at these morons. They were all lowering their cholesterol and they all like sped up their demise. My dad, they used to try to give it to him, and he had 4 bypasses. I don't know how many heart attacks he had. He lived to be 85. He smoked till about 3 days before he died. He was on oxygen. He was given 6 months to live, and he lasted 7 years, but he didn't take the drugs. I gave him supplements, and shortly before he died, he said to me, I really thank you, because I think I didn't believe you, but I did listen to you, and I did take what you told me to take, and I was here 7 years later, so.
Well, it's like vitamin D, the same thing. They used to tell you not to take over 500 milligrams of vitamin D.
Yeah.
Because
400 was the cutoff, yeah.
and because of the fat soluble, but now, I mean, look at how much vitamin D we're taking,
Yeah.
it's just unbelievable.
It is. But we're taking the right type too. Before
Right.
they weren't talking about D3.
Right.
Rosie?
Well, they didn't break it up.
What would you consider a decent cholesterol number? Because, you know, all these every doctor, I heard an uncle who's 90 saying, his doctor said he has 200, and the doctor says he's gotta get it lower, and I'm going, you know, it's
Talk to like people, the Mediterranean people. You know, they have 250, 300 cholesterols. The HDLs are usually really high. HDL is the important one, but it's, you know, now they're going below 100 on LDL. It's like, you know what it takes to get your LDL down that low? It's nuts. I mean, I just don't. You know, you are the consumer. You need to be your own advocate. You know, my mother doesn't get flu shots. Again, she's 90, and every year they go in. We want to give you a flu shot. I'm not taking a flu shot. Why not? My son says I don't need one. She takes a homeopathic flu remedy once a month. Hasn't had the flu. It's not happening. So, I digress. Excuse me. Vitamin B1. We're gonna go through all the different B vitamins. The takeaway I would want you to have from this is, if you're gonna take a B vitamin, take it as a complex. In nature, B vitamins don't exist by themselves. So there's no real reason to. Yes, there are, like B1 is associated with neuropathy. B6 has got some other neurological problems. B12 is another thing, pernicious anemia. But ultimately, you take them if you feel like you need B vitamins, you take it together, and it'll work much better. Because again, you take too much of one, you're going to lower the others. B12. B12 is something that we actually. B12 is one of those things that we're discovering that needs to be in its active form. So the regular B12 is something called cyanocobalamin, which has actually got cyanide on it. Not cyanide's going to kill you, but it's actually a cyanide group. The one that we compound here is called methylcobalamin. So a lot of people cannot methylate. Methylcobalamin is the active form. You can actually buy it over the counter as a little tablet and stick it underneath your tongue to absorb. Some people can't absorb it orally at all. So we make a lot of injections, a lot of children with autism, a lot of people with Lyme disease. We make it for, there's a lot of different conditions where injectable B12 is the only thing that works. And that the active form is called methyl B12. Did I see a hand? Vitamin B2, again, we're gonna blast through these because you guys don't want to be here till 10 o'clock. I told you the story about B6, how I remember an old-time pharmacist when I was a wise ass. I first got out of pharmacy school and had a big argument with this guy about taking vitamin B6. Because we filled a lot of isoniazid prescriptions back then. And he was like, no, that's not, you take it so you don't get an upset stomach. I says, that's not why you take it. You take it because if you don't take it, you're going to get neuropathy. So I won the argument, but he thought he was smarter than me. Here's a list of drugs that are deplete vitamin B6. B12. Big one for me is metformin, which is the third down in the middle. If you don't know what metformin is an anti-diabetic drug. If you know any diabetic people, they all get neuropathy. All right, the drugs they take cause it. All right, not 100%, but they definitely contribute to it.
Contribute to what?
They contribute to their the drugs that they take to lower their blood sugar contribute to peripheral neuropathy, which every diabetic gets at some point. That's why they get amputations and the like. Vitamin K is another one that's more and more stuff is coming out about that. Comes in multiple forms, K1, K2. Sometimes referred to as a forgotten vitamin because its major benefits are often overlooked. It's essential in bone building, blood clotting, and preventing heart disease, just to name a few things. Sodium, everyone thinks so you should be, a lot of the thoughts with blood pressure, high blood pressure is restricting sodium. It's not necessarily the case. You do need it. It is essential. You have to have it in the right balance, but to go sodium free, that typically is not a good thing. Magnesium, right up there on my list of if you can only take one or two things. I take magnesium every day. It's thought that 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium. Again, it's one of those minerals that's in soil that's not there anymore. If you look at the sales, if you look at the sales of laxatives in this country, what's mostly in the laxative. It's magnesium. That tells you people are deficient, and that's why people are taking it, because there's so many people deficient between the diets and everything else. Yes?
What time of day do you take the magnesium?
I take it before I go to bed because it helps with muscle contraction too. So if you got anything, restless leg or anything going on. It's not to say you couldn't take it. I mean, when someone comes to me and they're really bad, I tell them to take it 2 or 3 times a day. But as a maintenance, I take it once a day at bed.
And how much?
What's the dose?
I take 4 to 800, just depends on how I'm feeling.
What's the amount?
400 to 800 milligrams chelated, not there's like magnesium oxide. You don't want to take that. There's a pharmaceutical company that came out with that. It's called Mag-Ox. It's not a good form. It doesn't absorb well. Actually will give you constipation versus diarrhea. I mean versus loose stools.
Do you have to take calcium with magnesium for them to be absorbed?
You don't need to take calcium. You need to take magnesium with calcium to absorb calcium. You don't need to take
Not the other way around.
you don't need to take it for the magnesium. Magnesium absorbs really well.
What's your favorite form?
The chelated forms, again, one of the ones that we have it's called magnesium complex, and it's got citrate and malate and I don't know, I can't remember them all, but
Doesn't excess calcium block magnesium? I was on that bone broth diet,
Uh-huh.
and my toes were curling at night. I think it was too much calcium.
yeah, I'm not familiar with that. I'm sorry. Yes.
I'm the person who asks a lot of questions, but in all these things I've been noticing memory loss. Has there been any studies at all that maybe the Alzheimer's conditions that we have now might be due to the medications that they were on that were giving them depletion of certain vitamins?
I think there's definitely depletions going on. I don't know if anything has been associated with that. I think, unfortunately, by the time someone gets Alzheimer's, it's too late because already the things have formed in their brain and the like. So it's hard to know. I mean, maybe I would love to think that someday that they'll figure that out. But I mean, I think my own personal opinion is a lot of toxicity involved in Alzheimer's. There's a lot of issues, heavy metals and stuff like that.
A lot of toxicity in what?
With Alzheimer's, I think there's a lot of heavy metal toxicity associated with it that's not really looked for. A lot of liver toxicity. They give people with Alzheimer's glutathione, which is something that helps your liver. It's another thing that we make here. It's an injectable item. And I've seen videos of people with Parkinson's too, which is along the same line, where they give them glutathione and all of a sudden they can walk without the shakes. Unfortunately, it doesn't last very long, but it tells you that there's liver is related to toxicity, right? Because that's your number one detoxification organ in your body.
I heard on the radio that Lipitor was associated with dementia.
Definitely. Oh yeah.
But that was too late in my situation.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's ever too late as far as I think you can always get stuff back with the CoQ10. I think you can take it and reverse the damages. I mean, you can get some, like the big funky word is rhabdomyosis, which means it destroyed something in your muscles, the Lipitor and those types of drugs. So people that get off of them and get treated with CoQ10 and some other stuff, it never really goes away, because once you kill muscle, it's dead. It's like when you have a heart attack, you kill a piece of your heart. The tissue's dead. You don't bring that back, but you can support the rest of the stuff around it.
I've heard of CoQ10 and I've taken it, but I don't. Is it sort of a general regenerator?
It's mitochondria are like the energy sources in your brain and in your heart in different areas, and it feeds the mitochondria. And so it is dose dependent. You do need. It's not the cheapest item in the world, and although the prices come way down in recent years, but you need a lot of it if you're as opposed to me. I take like one a day because I'm not treating anything. I'm not taking anything. I'm just taking it as a healthy thing. If you're taking something that's zapping it out of your body, you need to take a lot of it to replace what your body's losing. Melatonin. So another, what I call a scourge of society, is the amount of people walking around sleep deprived, myself included, sometimes. And I don't take any drugs, but there's a lot of different drugs, major drug classes that mess with your melatonin, mess with your sleep. Proteins. Proteins are very associated with mental health, because proteins are made from amino acids, and amino acids are very good nutrients for your brain. there's a formula that we became familiar with called Empower, which was actually developed in Canada, and it was made, it's amino acids and proteins and some nutrients. Are you giving me signals? No, she's not. Okay. They have a sign. They're supposed to have a sign for me to shut up, but I didn't think it was that simple. So they came out with this pig farmer in Canada, as the legend goes, which is actually true because you can look this up, came up with this feed because his pigs were aggressive. And when he gave the pigs this feed, the aggression stopped, and he figured it out himself, and so they turned it into a human formula. So they give it to bipolar, a lot to kids, and there's like these miracle stories about how it worked. And I have a colleague who worked at McLean, and he was dead set against it, and he tells the story about how another physician came to him, and his son was off the wall. He was 10 or 12 years old, and he had been given this bottle of Empower, this formula, and he couldn't get the salesman away from him. So he took the bottle, and the guy came to him, and he was frantic, and he says, I need help for my son. And he says, well, we have to evaluate him. That's not how we do it. And he wanted him to prescribe medication. He says, I'm not giving this kid any drugs. He says, I have to evaluate him. I have to think about it. It was on a Friday, and so he said, well, I have to leave here with something. He insisted, and he said, take this bottle, and he gave it to him, and he called him the beginning of the week, and he said, I don't know who this kid is in my house. He calmed him down. He then became a believer, even though he didn't really believe in supplements. But that's how he came to believe. A lot of us have those moments, life-changing moments. Yes, Lenore.
So how do you spell that?
Empower, EMPOWER. We have it upstairs. We keep it behind the counter, and the reason is, listen, because it's a nutritional supplement, it's dangerous for people taking psychiatric medicines, because what it does is it feeds the body and it makes everything work much better. So, for instance, lithium is a drug that's used in psychosis, all right? So lithium's prescription strength is 300 milligrams. When you take this Empower formula, you take 3 milligrams of lithium, if you take it at all, because it makes it work 100 times stronger. So you can take a lower dose of the psych med and without all the side effects and get the same benefit.
What's in Empower?
It's a proprietary formula. It's all listed on the bottle.
But it's not a prescription drug.
No, it's not, but we require a physician's order because we know it can harm people.
Would it amplify the effects of Adderall, some of the psychostimulants?
Oh yeah. Zyprexa, a lot of those things. Yep. So it's pretty neat. But I'm getting off track. I'm sorry. That's not really. But, so now we're going to go into specific drugs. So you get the first one is acid suppressing drugs and antacids. So I think the big one that everyone probably knows is the little purple pill on TV, Protonics, which that was a prescription drug, and that went off patent. So they somehow duped the FDA into letting them make it over the counter, so people could keep taking it and ruining themselves. My mother is one of those people. I can't get her off of it, because once you start suppressing acid that way, you get rebound. So if you try to get off it, you think, oh, my stomach is upset. And when these drugs when I worked in the south end of Boston, I got out of pharmacy school 40 years ago, Mass Health, which is Medicaid, would only pay for this drug for 4 weeks because it was the most expensive drug on the market at the time. There was only brand name, wasn't generic. And so people started fighting them, so they went up to 6 weeks. Ultimately, they went up to 8 weeks because it was in the package insert. Every manufacturer, they make something, they test it, goes to market. They have to say, okay, this drug is indicated for this condition for this period of time. After 4 to 8 weeks, the situation is supposed to be resolved because you're supposed to do interventions of diet and whatever else, right? People take this for years upon years upon years. And like I said at the outset, the longer you take these things, the more that pool is dripping to the point where it's going to be empty. I'm a little afraid for my mom because I worry about her bones, but she can't. We try, we give her enzymes, we do different things. It's like the one thing I cannot get her off of because she doesn't want to have that upset stomach. So
how does one get off?
It's like a cold turkey. A lot of people actually are not deficient in acid. They have. A lot of people don't have too much. They have too little.
Yeah.
And so you take something called betaine hydrochloride, that in your body, when your stomach goes into your stomach, the hydrochloric acid comes off of that, and that's what you actually need. Not everybody, but a lot of people are deficient in that. It's the same symptom, though. Same symptom of too much is the same symptom as too little. And then you don't digest your food. So then you don't absorb your nutrients, you get bad gas, you get constipation. I'm going to show you some slides in a little bit that show you some of the studies if you want to really see a horror show as to what some of the things have caused. This one here. Read down to the conclusion. And this is JAMA, which is a legitimate medical, this isn't like a vitamin magazine. This is Journal of American Medical Association. It's as legitimate as you're going to get. The conclusion is the current use of gastric acid suppressive therapy was associated with an increased risk of community-acquired pneumonia. I mean, they have those things. Again, it's one of those things, pneumonia's on the rise. I wonder why. Not 100% the reason, but certainly would be contributing to that. Another slide, again, black down the bottom. This is about Clostridium difficile, which is otherwise known as C. diff. I guarantee you everybody in this room knows somebody who's died of C. diff. Okay? People go to the hospitals and they catch it in the hospital and they die. They give them vancomycin for it. They use different things, but it's totally wiped out the good bacteria in your system and you can't fight it off, and that's a big one for hospital-acquired stuff, and people die from it. My brother's mother-in-law died from it. And the third one, long-term PPI therapy, that's the acronym for proton pump inhibitors, which is the little purple pill, its cousin now, Nexium, and whatever else they're getting away with. Particularly at high doses associated with increased risk of hip fractures. This is like drug company information, because the drug companies do these studies to try to prove that drugs are safe. But again, it's all about the money, unfortunately. Antibiotics is the next big one. When you come here, and hopefully if you go somewhere else and you need an antibiotic, because not all drugs are bad, sometimes you need things. These antibiotics destroy all the good and the bad bacteria in your body. They basically sterilize your gut. You have to replace that, and you have to take a probiotic at least 2 hours away from this, and you have to take it for, I'd say, 30 to 60 days after you've taken after your course of antibiotics is over. I personally take probiotics a few times a week. I think it's another one of those ones that everyone should have in their house. Whenever I go out to eat, first thing I do when I come home is I take probiotics, because I don't know what's in the food, you know. I mean, I hate to feel that way, but that's, try not to eat out as much as possible, but when you do, you need to be thinking about those kind of things.
Excuse me. So you should be taking the probiotic 2 hours after you've taken the antibiotic?
Right, because at least 2 hours, because when the antibiotic is still, the antibiotic will kill the probiotic.
Yeah.
So you want to take it at least a couple hours apart. I mean, so even if you, more is better. It's just a question of remembering to take it. So I just tell people at least 2 hours.
Steve,
yes.
I called here one day, asked them when the best time to take it. They told me before they eat breakfast in the morning.
Different thoughts on that?
Yeah.
I used to be, we first learned about them, we were told bedtime.
Bedtime?
I don't know. Okay. I think, I always tell people, you know, if I something, I have to take this 3 times a day. Well, 3 times a day technically means every 8 hours. So that means 8 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 10 at night. Well, what if you're not up at 10 at night? You know, so I always say it's better to take it than not take it. So if you can't do the spacing, take it when you can take it. That wasn't even right, was it? No,
No, 4 p.m. and
Thank
midnight.
you. Okay. Yeah, which means midnight, right? Okay, thank you, yeah. But
so you're saying
you get the point.
Probiotic 2 hours after you finish the course of antibiotics?
No, you take it during the course of the antibiotic, at least 2 hours apart from it, and then for at least 1 to 2 months after.
I thought the antibiotic would just kill the probiotic.
No, well, if in 2 hours, the probiotic, you know, a drug gets absorbed, if you know, barring there's nothing strange going on with you, that thing is, you know, 15 to 20 minutes, dissolves in your stomach, goes into your bloodstream within, you know, it's out of your, if it's still there 2 hours later, you've got other problems. Okay, tetracyclines for antibiotics. The reason I'm highlighting this is because there is a ton of Lyme disease out there, and there are a ton of people that we compound tetracycline for. So it's a long-term thing. So again, it's that thing where you're taking it for a long period of time. You're depleting a lot of things. You're also depleting B vitamins and zinc and calcium, magnesium, B12. So
if you've had Lyme disease and you were on the antibiotics for that, and you haven't done anything for about a year because you didn't realize you had things to do, should you rethink it and do some things now?
It's never too late, I don't think. I don't think so. I mean, you can take it even if you didn't have Lyme, so. Antidepressants. One of the things I came across in my studies was that Prozac, although it's not as popular as it used to be when it first came out and before there was these other second and third generation drugs of this type, is a big depleter of melatonin and thus causes sleep disturbances. So, anti-epileptic drugs, I can tell people, I see, you know, being a pharmacist is one of those strange things where there's a lot of information you wish you didn't know, but you do. We used to come home, when Diane and I were dating, we'd come home to my parents' house and we'd have these ridiculous conversations at the dinner table, and my parents would be like freaked out, like, do you guys have to talk about this? You know, we were just in school that day and whatever we learned was usually not really good dinner topics, but we did it anyway. But one of the things with people with seizure disorders is you usually see them, you can spot them because they have really bad gums, they're all overgrown, and it's the nutrient deficiencies that the seizure medication causes that screws up their gums. There's a dentist, I don't know if he's local or not, but do we still have the CoQ10 for the gums? No. He had it, you know, it was one of those things where it was popular one time. It's not, he was promoting it, but people that have gum disease, I've had some dental work, some really aggressive dental work at one point in time when I had all the mercury taken out of my teeth, so I had like a 10-hour dental appointment, and you know, it was so I came home and I took loads of CoQ10 and arnica and poured it on, and I healed up incredibly well. They couldn't believe how well I healed up. Of course, I lived through it too. Anti-diabetic drugs, and I went through this before, so you know, the big thing is the B vitamins and the CoQ10. So one of the studies they did, they found diabetics on metformin, the brand name was Glucophage. A lot of diabetic drugs get withdrawn from the market from the FDA. I mean, they're really, nobody, you know, I don't envy anyone with diabetes, but some of these medications, the oral medications especially, they have found so many aftermarket problems that didn't, whether they turned up or not in pre-market trials, who knows? If they did, they probably hit them, because that's what they usually do. But there's been a boatload of them that have caused people to die. Like a lot of people died from some of these drugs. So people that were on metformin were compared to people who didn't take it. They have, you know, the study has, okay, over here this group takes it, this group doesn't. They had less than half the levels of B12 in their body than the people who didn't take it. Less than half. And then that was like in 6 months. And then the longer they went out with the research, the lower the levels got. Anti-inflammatory drugs, there's a whole host of them, and they deplete a whole host of things. So anti-inflammatories, my spin on them is this. You need to take them sometimes, but again, they're not meant for long-term treatment. But they found Vioxx was a big one that was made by Merck, and Vioxx depleted stuff in the heart, and people started having heart attacks and dying. So they pulled it off the market, but it was out a few years before they did that. Cost them hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're still out there making lots of money. So, and more anti-inflammatory. You don't always think of it as anti-inflammatory type drug. One sec, but corticosteroids, which is prednisone, are anti-inflammatory. They cause a boatload of problems, besides the fact that they really mess with your adrenal gland. Sulfasalazine, which is something that is used in people with colitis. It's a sulfur drug, kind of nasty. Cause lots of side effects. Yes, madame.
What do you think about prophylactic aspirin?
I think it's okay. I mean, you know, they always say that whoever they are, say that if aspirin came on the market today, it wouldn't get past the FDA. It would be a prescription. There's a lot of drugs out there like that are pre-19, whatever the year is, 34 or something, that Tylenol, never. Tylenol kill you. When people take like narcotics that have Tylenol in them, the Tylenol kills them, not the narcotic. The narcotic, you can take enormous amounts of narcotic. I mean, as long as you don't mix it with other stuff. But the Tylenol in them is what they've, over time, have really reduced the amount of Tylenol that they're allowed to put in these narcotics because of that. And another one would be a prescription. Yes?
I noticed back a couple of slides.
Oh, I'm not going back. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Some of the medications for asthma, the inhalers,
Yep.
they were appearing in that slide. And
Yeah, they're steroids.
yeah.
Okay, so so they're technically anti-inflammatory. You know, I'll tell you a good one right now. Flonase is over the counter. Flonase is a steroid. I mean, people are using it for allergies. My grandson grabbed it. We were ready to kill my son, but he's on his second marriage, so we have to be a little lenient. We want him to stay married, you know, so it's like, okay, the second wife wants the kid to be on Flonase. Okay, I can live with that. Don't like it, but yeah, so yes, they are in that drug class. Inhaled steroids are not as bad as oral, but over time people get really dependent on them, and they definitely cause some problems. So that answer your question, or are you questioning what?
Questions.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What is the biggest thing that it would deplete, if you had to say it, like the oral asthma medications, inhalers?
I think
Calcium?
yeah.
Bone density, maybe.
Yeah.
Can you counteract that by taking calcium? Or-
To a certain extent, yeah. I mean, definitely you would want to do that. Yeah, calcium, magnesium, certainly, yeah. You know, the other thing they do is they mess with your blood sugar, steroids. So they mess with your adrenals. Is it too cold? You want to turn it down? Okay.
I'm always cold.
Okay, all right, good. Okay, no problem. Got it. Okay, did we do cardiovascular? So this one I love, all right? Digoxin, which is a natural product, has a very narrow therapeutic index, which means that when I talked about that grain of 1 milligram, like you can only take it as a 1 milligram, you can only take it as 1 grain or 2 grains. If you take 3, you can stop your heart. I mean, it's very, very small. It was one of those drugs where years ago, the government did not allow them to make a generic because it had such a, there was a few drugs like that they called narrow therapeutic range drugs where they were, now you can do it because they have, the technology's there, but there was, I mean, you could overdose on that and kill you and stop your heart like nothing. So,
do they, when they bring them onto market over the counter, do they make them less?
these aren't over the counter. That would never be over the counter. But
No, but I mean
like the
some-
the Prilosec, no, that's the same strength. That's prescription
Same
strength.
strength as
Yeah,
the-
Flonase is prescription strength. Something that's supposed to come to market soon. I'm trying to remember what it was. There was another one. I was like, are you kidding me? But again, it's they're the drug companies finance the FDA. The FDA approves the drug. There's a slight conflict of interest there, okay? Just a slight one. So yeah.
Well, they bring it over the counter because now that the insurance is not paying for
Right.
it.
Well, they lose their exclusivity on it, and they don't want it. But so then the insurance stops paying for it when a generic comes out. So now their answer is, okay, we've been killing people with, been charging $200 for years for this thing. We made our money. Now we'll bring it out for $20 over the counter, and people will still buy it because same price as your copay, basically, right?
Crazy.
Antihypertensive is another one. They do a great job at reducing blood pressure, but at what cost? I mentioned early on that a bunch of us here went to the other side about 20 years ago, and we started believing in natural products and nutritional interventions. And our mentor, which some of you have been around long enough, Dr. Hinz, who used to come here and speak, he asked him one day about blood pressure. I said, what's the deal with blood pressure? And he says, well, it's the pump, the pipes, or the filters. I says, what do you mean by that? He says, well, the pump is your heart, the pipes are your arteries, and the filters are your kidneys. He says, that's one of those things is off when you have high blood pressure. So what do we do as a society? We give you a drug that not only knocks your blood pressure down, but knocks out a whole lot of other processes in your body. Instead of saying, okay, so yes, you're in the hospital, you get to the emergency room and your blood pressure you're going to blow a vessel through your brain, right? Yeah, you have to give drugs to get that down. But shouldn't we try to fix it over time so you don't need that? That's my little
How do you do that?
lifestyle changes. Essential fatty acids, you know, get things working properly. Hydration. You know how many people are dehydrated and dehydration causes that? I mean, think about the different things. Anti-lipid drugs. So these are the big ones, and we talked a bit about this already, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it. But the way the anti-lipid drugs work in the body is they block the pathway of cholesterol manufacture. They also block coenzyme Q10 in the body because they're in the same pathway. So if you block one, you can't just block one, you got to block them both. And like I said before, I don't believe that cholesterol is a problem to begin with. Mine's like, my doctors asked me for 10 years to take them, and I'm just like, no. Occasionally I take, there's a red yeast rice and plant sterols. I take that just to make them happy, and it goes down and gets off my case. So, you know. Red yeast rice. So red yeast rice comes from China or from Asia, and the original cholesterol drug was called Mevacor, and Mevacor is lovastatin, and red yeast rice was the original source of lovastatin. So, but it doesn't have the side effects, and you can't patent a natural product. So Merck came along and figured out, looked at it in a microscope and said, we can manufacture this, we can synthesize this and have the same effect, which they did. The problem is, it has all the side effects too. So here's some good ones for you. So again, down in the bold, conclusion of this study about decreased coenzyme Q10 levels. Even brief exposure to atorvastatin, which is Lipitor's generic name, causes a marked decrease in blood CoQ10 concentration. Widespread inhibition of CoQ10 synthesis could explain the most commonly reported adverse effect of statins, especially exercise intolerance, myalgia, which is muscle pain, and myoglobinuria, which is your muscles are dissolving and you're peeing them out. So that's a great thing, right? The next one. I didn't do my stand-up routine tonight, so I'm just doing the jokes instead about the drug companies. Yes, my dear.
If LDL is high, then there are two tests, right? The big particle and the small particle. You think we should do that, or we should not worry at all if LDL is high?
I don't think you should worry at all about it, truthfully, but you can certainly, yeah, I mean, as science evolves, they say, okay, let's look at this fraction, or let's look at that fraction. I'm more concerned with that, like if you have cancer and you want to see if your red blood cells are affected, than I am about cholesterol and figuring all that stuff out. Next one, conclusion. For the first time in a double-blind randomized study in CHD, which is coronary heart disease patients, we report that LLDs, what the hell are LLDs? Significantly, lipid-lowering drugs, thanks Kevin, significantly alter the metabolism of essential fatty acids that are critically important for the pathogenesis and prevention of CHD. So, what did they do? They came out with a drug form of fish oil. It's like $200 for a bottle, but they made a patent, they patented it, and they gave it what's called an NDC, National Drug Code number, so it's covered on your insurance for a copay. And it's not even the right form of the fish oil because they did something called esterifying it to make it last for however many years it lasts in the bottle. So, anyone that's been here knows that we're big proponents of. Is it hot?
It's
okay. She's cold. You're hot. Can we have an independent? Can we have an independent opinion back there?
Comfortable.
It's good. It's good.
Fish oils are a natural product. How can they patent that?
You can't, but you can take it and make it into a drug by adding something to it. Get it? You're starting to catch on now. Okay. Simvastatin, which was Zocor. Thus, simvastatin lowered serum fatty acid concentrations while also altering the relative percentages of important PUFAs, which is polyunsaturated fatty acids. Again, not a good thing. Diuretics. Okay, diuretics are supposed to be the first line in antihypertensive therapy, and they actually work pretty good. And the major side effect is they increase blood sugar. So a lot of people that have a lot of diabetics have fluid and high blood pressure. So it's kind of like you got to balance what you're going to do here, right? and again, I talked about this earlier, how this was one of the things that we learned about in pharmacy school you take potassium for. The problem is it's hard to take enough potassium in banana form to counteract the amount of fluid, because your body doesn't stop putting it, it's just going to keep pumping this stuff out and pumping it out. So they do have other diuretics that they add another drug to counteract that, but again, it's pumping a lot of stuff out, and it's
Steve, what's an elevated H level?
Where is that, Jim?
On the bottom. It was on another slide too.
H levels.
The last thing on the
The last line.
The last line down the bottom.
Hydrogen?
Chemical display in elevated H levels.
I never even saw that. Kevin?
Yeah.
Any idea? Elevated H levels? Kevin's a young pharmacist. You might know.
Very last line.
Is it?
I see.
Is that homocysteine, do you think?
No.
We're going to have to get an answer to that. Oh, happy Flag Day, everyone, by the way. If we're all old enough in this room to remember Flag Day. I'm going to have to, I'll get everyone an answer on that. Leave me your emails, and I'll get an email from me as to what elevated H levels are.
So what if you wanted to not take a diuretic and you needed to take something? What's a natural?
Well, we use like liver and kidney tonics. Again, do they get enough out? I couldn't really say if they do. One thing to do to get fluid moving is like a trampoline, believe it or not. People use like little mini tramps, and that causes your lymph to. We have lymph products as well, homeopathic lymph things. Again, if I have my heart if I get the fluid sac on my heart is swollen with fluid, or my lungs, taking a diuretic. I'm sorry.
Right.
But short term, and then trying to see what's going on. But just a little swelling in your legs. CoQ10, magnesium, calcium.
Mrs. Google says H is hemoglobin.
Really?
I
Does
don't
that
know
make
if that makes
sense?
sense or not.
H is what?
Hemoglobin levels.
Hemoglobin levels.
Hemoglobin.
And it was on other ones too? I didn't see that. I don't know.
Yeah, also homocysteine.
Homocysteine most likely.
Okay, well, we'll keep checking. Okay.
I mean, what about caffeine? Diuretic?
Caffeine's okay. As
For
far as
diuretic.
taking it for a diuretic, you get other problems with it, with your
Yeah.
bones and stuff, but in your acid. But it's not a terrible diuretic.
We're thinking maybe hormone levels on that last slide.
Okay, well we got
Just an initial-
homocysteine and we got hemoglobin, so we're gonna figure it out. Hormone restoration therapy, one of my favorite subjects. So our number one compounded drug here is hormone replacement therapy. All right, it's actually, and I meant to say earlier today, not to neglect the women, but when we first started doing these lectures, if there was 2 men in the room, that was a big deal. Now we've got a really nice representation of men, so I congratulate you men out there. You're not as smart as the women, however, you're trying, okay?
Recognize it.
That's right. Okay, so one of the things I read, one of the physicians, she talked about the ensuing depression that's often diagnosed in women using HRT, which stands for hormone replacement therapy, might be better off treated with the appropriate supplements to restore their balance. A high potency multivite, some calcium, B complex, folic acid, magnesium, and zinc. This applies to younger women as well who are on oral contraceptive pills, because again, they're very, very strong. So, a lot of times this, in the era of women doing hormone replacement, they're also getting diagnosed with depression when in fact they've got imbalance and it's not being treated as such. Oral contraceptives, same types of thing. It's the same drug, only stronger.
They're really big on the B though.
Yes. Yeah.
So B complex would be a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, here's another one in bold. 150 to 200 million women are using these drugs. Concern over the nutritional status of females consuming OCA, which is oral contraceptive, prompted this view. 8 vitamins and 3 minerals were investigated. Contraceptive steroid ingestion was shown to depress the physiological level of 6 nutrients, riboflavin, which is B2, pyridoxine is B6, Folacin is folic acid, B12 ascorbic acid, and zinc. A lot of things to think about. These are all women of childbearing age. We think, anyway. You would think, right? And the next one, most studies support the contention that oral contraceptive usage leads to a deficiency of vitamin B6. Approximately 80% of all women using oral contraceptives for 6 months or more experience abnormal tryptophan metabolism. Tryptophan, what's helps you sleep. Okay, like that's what's in turkey that makes you sleepy, and that is a natural thing in your body as well that's supposed to kick in when everything is working properly. Laxatives. We talked about this already, how much huge overuse of laxatives that goes on in this country, and so it's just not only are the people deficient in the things like potassium, magnesium, but they're also doing a pretty good job of flushing everything out of themselves as well. Plus, they're not, when you're constipated, you're not able to digest your food properly. You got a lot of rotting stuff inside your system. Hence, it's good if you're zinc deficient so you can't smell. So this is we're getting towards the end of my slideshow. These are some weird drugs. I would call them weird. I don't see them all that much. I mean, you see them, but they're not as common, I should say. Talk about drugs over the counter now, like Zyrtec, Claret, and Allegra. Those were all prescription drugs that lost their patents. I'm trying to think, there was something else. Orlistat, which is Xenical. That was for diet use, and that was, when it came out, it was like the latest, greatest drug, and it was on TV, and it was advertised as, the side effects, when they read the side effects on the commercials, like, you will die. This was oily discharges. All pharmacists loved that one. Oily discharge was one of the side effects of that drug. And my conclusion would be, I hope you learned something tonight. I did say that my baseline recommendations for everybody would be High Potency Multivite, CoQ10, some type of omega-3 supplement, vitamin D, and a probiotic. And that's the end. I worked very hard to get through this in an hour and 12 minutes.
What vitamins would you take if you didn't want to take laxatives to stay regular?
Magnesium.
You said the magnesium complex. Now you do the citrate, and then there's the chelated.
Chelated one, yeah.
Is the complex a problem with your stomach?
No, not at all.
The magnesium complex.
No. Not at all.
Because some of them can be.
Yeah, no. And the thing about magnesium is, your body knows when you've had too much. I mean, I just tell people you're going to get loose stools. So, like, if someone comes to us and they're really constipated, it's like, okay, take this 3 times a day. Take 2-3 times a day. If you can't take too much. You're going to just get diarrhea if you do.
Right.
And then when you've had enough, then you cut back.
Steve, is there a problem with taking too much B6?
B vitamins are water soluble, so other than getting stinky pee, no. That's about all that's going to happen to you from too much B6. But again, you don't want to throw off the balance of the other ones, so to take just that, you're better off taking it in complex form.
And if they're fat soluble, what's the problem then with having too much?
Well, because your body can't excrete it. It goes into your, goes into your organs, which you may or may not want.
I see.
Yes, sir.
Take CoQ10 with AFib?
Yeah, you should.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yes.
Does nystatin deplete any of the nutrients in your body if you're taking it long term?
Nystatin?
Nystatin, yeah.
For thrush? For candida? Yeah, it's not systemically absorbed, so it just pretty much flushes through you urinate it out.
But can you take that long term?
Yeah.
If you have the candida, you really should be looking at other things.
Of course.
So the dependency on the hypothyroid, like thyrosin, the prescription drug. So of course it will be like long term, right? So do you think it's dangerous? Like.
No, I mean, thyroid people don't usually. It's probably one of the few things that you never see get resolved. It's like once something happens, I mean, you can treat it and you can optimize it, but usually there's some event in your life, a pregnancy or something, that something happens, or radiation exposure where your thyroid stops working. I mean, you can get it working as best as it's going to be, but a lot of times once the function goes, it's just you got to supplement it.
But the prescription one is still like if you're already taking prescription one, is it like the Thyroxine? Is it very like it is a shocking thing for the thyroid to go to a natural one like natural thyroid or almond?
Sometimes it just takes. Everyone's body is different. Not everyone reacts the same to the pig. It's porcine thyroid, so a lot of people don't tolerate it well. In some cases, it's one of the few things where, even though the pork thyroid is natural, so-called, because it has all the things in it from the thyroid gland of the pig, not everyone can tolerate that.
So selenium is the only nutrient, right?
Yeah, selenium and CoQ10 for thyroid. Yeah.
What do you think of colloidal silver?
I don't have an opinion on it one way or another.
So, is there any studies with these other biological companies like Biogen and Enzyme and their products? Those products are different than the pharmaceutical ones, right?
Biotech drugs?
Yeah.
I guess they're all pharmaceuticals. They're just differently made, engineered, if you would. I don't think there's any. I don't know of any. It's nothing that we really look at because we don't in the retail world we don't typically even see those drugs. They usually go through specialty networks. So, and they're usually for pretty serious conditions. When those people typically have
HIV or
have other problems as well. So yes.
You mentioned a lot about people who are taking different medications for heartburn, and none of them are good. So what would you recommend for somebody who had heartburn?
Digestive enzymes, ginger. We have a great product called Urban Moonshine Bitters. Have you ever taken bitters before? They have samples upstairs. You can't believe what bitters. We have bitters. Italians and people in the Mediterranean will have bitters with their meals after you eat. They work unbelievable. They're herbs. They're old herbal. They're hundreds of years old herbal formulas. There's alcohol in them, but they really just like I take a little thing of bitters, like a half a shot, and it's like after a heavy meal, and 2 minutes later you're
even
perfect.
If you have like a weak stomach and it's sensitive to acidy things.
Then you would just like do a sip of it. You just sip on it. Ginger I love too. Ginger honey tonic. I've used in pregnant women. I've used in people undergoing chemotherapy. Very, very soothing. It's very warming. It goes down. Everyone is an individual. You got to kind of talk to people and see what's it's rare to find something in the first shot that someone is crazy about, but I firmly believe in bitters.
And what do the bitters do?
They have carminative herbs in them, so it just settles things down in the stomach.
So it doesn't break.
Like what, huh?
Is it enzyme?
There's not enzymes in them. No, there's. If you read, most of them are like proprietary formulas. So you look at them, they don't tell you a whole lot about because it's everyone's own recipe. The different companies, but.
What's a natural way to help asthma sufferers without trying to wean off the inhalers?
We believe that asthma is caused by something wrong with your insides, with your intestines. And so it comes from, the skin in your lungs is the same as the skin in your stomach, and when it's inflamed, you don't see it. A lot of people like have eczema and psoriasis and stuff like that. When you see it on the outside, it's a sign of what your insides look like. So we
oil of oregano and apple cider vinegar is what I heard can be.
Those are certainly things that aid. Yeah.
They do. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have the sale going on upstairs if anyone wants. The lady up there is waving her finger at me, so that means something else.